Recording in progress.
All right, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the Select Board meeting of August 22nd to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
Move.
Second.
Seconded. Is there any changes on the agenda?
Send that down to the. Sure, Dan.
Any changes, Kathleen? No. Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We do not have anyone joining us on Zoom. I've already signed. Next is approval of the consent agenda.
Move as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there anything anyone would like to talk about or bring to the? I think you wanted to talk just a little bit about the correspondence you said, or? No?
Yes.
Yes.
The MREM's proposal, I just wanted to make sure we were going to discuss that at some point in the future. And two, wondered if anyone was going to attend the meeting on the 28th. And I didn't feel like we were really prepared, because we haven't talked about it, to have select board comments for the 28th. So I wondered if anyone was planning on going.
I can go.
Okay.
That's on the 28th.
Yeah.
I think it said Monday, the 28th, yeah.
I put on my calendar, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we obviously won't have specific questions for them at that meeting, so.
I suppose you could let them know we've seen the correspondence and that it will be taken up at a future board meeting. Okay, then, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda or maybe online?
Amazing.
Laura was gonna talk about stuff, right?
I thought Laura, I was expecting Laura, to be honest with you. She had sent us an
We're
email.
running a little bit early, so.
Well, not that early. Okay. Yeah, we even have it in the documents. We're gonna move on to Emily on the infrastructure committee.
I saw Laura at 3:30 and she said she was intending to be here, so.
She sent us an email saying she was gonna be here.
Okay, so maybe she'll pop
We'll
in
let you
later.
go ahead, and then maybe we'll circle back and provide her an
Okay,
opportunity.
fair enough. So.
And here's luck.
Oh my gosh.
Well, hi, friends. So I already told you a bit about the Portland Loo, and I just wanted to give you an update on that. So you saw my notes, hopefully. Yes? Okay, so others. So the Portland Loo is an alternative to the Portalet, and it provides some benefits, as you saw, that Portalets don't. So I'm having you consider rolling that in as part of our possibilities for public bathrooms in the town of Middlebury. We do have them in our public buildings, so this would be for after hours and in a location that we know people are desiring it, which is over by the post office in Triangle Park. So you saw in my notes that I've been talking to the post office about locating it there. I haven't heard back from them, but I just wanted to inform you that I tried to reach out to them just to see if we could consider that location. And of course, we would need to talk to Public Works about whether that's a good fit, but if it is, bam, that could be a good location. So that's one thing. And then I also reached out to Portland Loo to get all the costs and specs for it. So you're informed about that too. And Kathleen and Public Works are all copied on that. So the size of the Portland Loo is about 6 by 9, so it's about the size of a parking spot. So to give you a sense of scale, that's what it is in terms of its footprint. And some towns have actually located it in a parking spot, so we're not wed to putting it down by the post office, but I still think that's like the best location for so many reasons I already told you in my notes. It's just the access to Triangle Park, the access to the Marble Works. You have train station people coming through there, that are looking for a spot. It's across the street from the bus station. It's such a great location for something like that. And that you have something that provides water and allows somebody to come in with their stuff from the train. Imagine, like you're coming from the train station and you're trying to get up to the Middlebury Inn and you need to pop in somewhere, like to go to the bathroom, and it's on the way. Middlebury College students, they can access it that way too. So I like it for all those reasons, and I just wanted to share all of that with you. And I'm not sure where to go next in terms of budgeting for it. So now kind of that it will cost about $170,000 plus $30,000 to $50,000 to install it. So a lot of that cost depends on how much you want to put into it. And if you open up the document, you'll see the breakdown of the different costs. And I tried to explain to you that shipping it alone costs $8,000. That's a big chunk, so. I think we'll probably want to do what Burlington did in terms of weatherizing it for the winter. And I'm glad to report that Burlington loves it, and has had great success with it. And that we did poll people, at town meeting about their willingness to pay for the maintenance of such a thing. And they said yes, of course, we gave them a pretty ambitious cost for that maintenance, and Burlington said it probably won't cost that much, but Kathleen warns us that we're not Burlington, and that we'd have to consider that. But I still think it's a good thing for us to plan for. I don't know whether you want to put it in your 2024 budget or you want to put it out. I know that there are a lot of other capital projects in front of that one, but you never know. Maybe like the light bulb goes off, we're saying, we could roll that in or attach that to this project or somehow work it in. So I wanted you to have the numbers, I wanted you to know the specs, and I wanted you to know how far I had gotten with it, and that I'm willing to continue to help you, with figuring out other ways to pay for it. I explained in my notes that Rotary has been interested in helping with the public bathroom project, and I don't know how far they would go with that, but that's one potential funder, for a piece of it. And maybe there are other sources like DIDC money I mentioned, or others, so that we can think about that. So that's where I am, and I just wanted to give you that quick update on the Portland Loo, the public bathroom. That's like Portlet plus.
So 6 by 9 gives you just one bathroom or anything else in there?
One bathroom.
No shower,
No shower,
No
but
sink.
there's water, so, and the way it's designed is that you access the water, I think, on the outside of the unit, so somebody could be inside using the loo while somebody outside could be accessing water, which is a nice feature.
Okay.
And it's vented top and bottom, as you saw in the pictures. I gave you lots of pictures in the documentation, so you can see what it looks like. And Kathleen, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add from what you saw in Portland, about the loo, but, certainly feel free to chime in, about what your impression was. We know that it's in City Park in Burlington. You can go up there now and see how it's used, and it complements the pop-up events in City Park very well. That we're using Triangle Park for the summer market, so it's such a nice thing to couple with all the activity that's happening in that region. So I just see lots of advantages to us thinking about it.
Laura, I missed the part, did you hear back from the post office?
I haven't heard back from them yet. I've reached
Okay.
out to them a few times, and what I've learned is that it's a new person that's in charge there, and they don't know Middlebury, so it's gonna take a little bit more persistence, to break through there and figure out if we can pop something up over there.
So my only thought when you mentioned putting it in a parking spot was, adding additional installation cost for bollards to protect it, so concrete posts, so that if somebody can't run into it, they'll run into the concrete first, and I think that would be, if we got to the point of considering location, adding that to the installation cost,
That would be wise.
so.
Emily?
I think we'd have to talk about the ADA access if it's in a parking spot as opposed to up on up on the sidewalk space or something like that also, because you'd potentially have to change curbs and things of that nature.
So
Then
what,
my other comment.
do you want
What?
to come up to the mic so people can hear you?
My,
Okay.
yeah.
So Emily said we have to consider ADA access if we were gonna put it in a parking spot.
Which is, I mean, not necessarily a limiting factor, but just it could be additional costs depending on where it goes. And then, is Burlington weatherizing theirs in the
Yes.
wintertime? Do you know what that entails? Because having water on the outside of a structure sounds a little terrifying to me for winter conditions.
Yeah, you can, I'll forward you the contact information for
Okay.
Burlington Public Works, and I did talk to them, and they said it worked,
Okay.
for the winter.
Yeah.
And there were 2 days where they did have to turn the water off because it was really that cold, but only like 2 days. So that's what they would do, like if you got a forecast that it was gonna be like really, like way below zero, that's what they,
And is it a
They
water
do.
tank, or is it connected to our water
it's connected to
system?
our water system.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, and the specs would show you that, which are very detailed.
You haven't brought this to infrastructure, have you?
I don't know, did I bring it to infrastructure,
I feel like
Heather?
when I saw you present.
I'm s-
Usually it would be part of the capital budget
Yeah.
planning process.
Yeah,
Which is coming right up.
yeah.
So it might be worth.
I'm not sure that we're far enough along in knowing all the details to consider it in this capital budget. But we could talk about it.
It might be worth it.
I mean, I
could
think
do
we
it-
need a location, and I think we need to figure out whether we can get services to that location. And then I think we need to know, if some of these other organizations were going to contribute, how much, so we knew how much to put in the capital budget. I mean, when do we start in the capital budget process? September, October?
We'll be asking
Like-
for requests in September.
Yep.
And then the
I mean, that's coming-
infrastructure committee starts working on
October.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could talk about it, but I'm not quite sure I have enough answers yet to actually put it in the budget. That's my personal opinion right at the moment. That's just me, though.
Yep, if not this year, next year, but,
Yeah.
but we're
Let's keep having it.
getting
That doesn't,
there.
just if we don't put it in the budget, doesn't mean we can't still be having conversations and figuring some of these
Right.
details out so that we
Exactly.
could put it in a
Which is
future
why
budget.
I'm bringing it
Yeah.
now.
And I do appreciate all of the information, and I think it's possibly a good fit for our area if we can figure out some of the details and how to pay for it, and
Emily, do you have preferred sites? Have you looked at this at all?
No, I haven't looked at it. My only concern of the post office is that it's on a hill there. And so to access it, if we are, in ADA compliance, you have to have a level enough surface to be opening the door and things of that nature.
So I see it on the concrete pad where the bike racks are right now, so it would be level,
Okay.
So
maybe, why don't we go look together in the field, and then we can get you also on the infrastructure committee
okay.
agenda.
That sounds
so
like a good next step. And
To keep, we, sorry to hijack, but if you're gonna go look in the field, is there a sewer service line and a water service line in the area that
But I
we're
guess there
talking
is
about? I mean, or are we gonna have to run a completely new line? Like,
All of those.
those are the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I was thinking of that too.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so
We'll connect.
we'll take a look.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, though. I mean, I appreciate all your effort and time getting this information to us. so.
I had sticker shock when you sent me that. I thought somehow in my head I had 50 grand that we'd
Right,
talked about.
well, we did originally, and that was 3-4 years ago, and I guess that might have been the cost for X, not like the shipping and the da-da-da-da-da-da, like, so now we have a more realistic sense of what it costs. And they say, it pays for a portalet within 5 years, that's the kind of the payback. But I don't know actually what we're paying for portalets these days.
What would it cost to build 6x9?
An actual bathroom?
Yeah, yes. It shouldn't be costing $200,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It would cost more than,
I mean, we could look at it.
Is it all stainless?
Some of it has to
Yeah,
do
the-
with, comparing what the, I do like the idea that it's vented, like the ones that when you're traveling in Europe, you'll see a lot of those types, and they do seem to have less smell when you're using them, and
yeah.
Well, this one would actually be plumbed, so it's not like a porta potty where there's a tank full of waste,
Right.
So why is
Oh,
it
that's the
so
way those
heavily
are.
vented
Yeah.
if it is plumbed
It's
to
for,
sewer?
it's for safety, because, so that it allows you to see that, what's going on a bit, like while giving you privacy at the same time. So they did all this research in Portland, to come up with this design that made it a good fit for urban locations. And so it's vented on top and bottom so that you can kind of tell whether there's activity in there that doesn't seem right, and then you have the ability to open it and address it.
I don't know if the location right by the post office is ideal, though, for this type of, I mean, I'd be interested, you ought to look at options, and that probably is our next step, is if, whatever we're gonna do, where's the ideal location for,
Yeah, well, you saw in my notes, a couple of other possible scenarios. It could be behind the library. That portalet back there is a heavily used portalet. The one that's down on Mill Street is a
Let's-
great location, but I'm not sure it's used very much because it's down a hill. You might get people coming off the footbridge, and in the Mill Street
so now.
area.
We've got Emily started on it.
Mhm.
We're not gonna solve it tonight, so let's leave that with Emily and to get with you, and look at what our options are.
Okay.
Definitely should look, with Carrera's right nearby, we should look at what it would cost to build something,
I'll be interested in that.
a concrete one. I don't think you want a wooden one, so, but compare.
I mean, you want people to be able to see it, like and find it easily. You don't want to tuck it away. Yeah. I mean, I've run into
Okay.
people in the marble
We
works.
just agreed we're moving on?
Yeah,
Okay,
that don't know where the public bathroom is.
thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
So the first item from the infrastructure committee is the car bid that, so Bill put out a bid for a P hybrid, so it would be a plug-in hybrid, which the battery capacity is like 30 miles range, which we figured, is about what the most that I draw or use on a standard day, although right now it's a little bit more. But typically, it's less than 30, and so then it would be considered an electric vehicle, and then for conferences and things like that, it would be able to draw off of gasoline. There was some dialogue at the infrastructure committee meeting back and forth about if it would be better to just go to straight EV, and I know there's been interest from the energy committee since those meeting minutes came out, asking for a straight EV vehicle. I guess my concern with straight EV is lithium production. I don't think we are environmentally there yet. And I think there's a big carbon footprint with lithium production. This would use a lithium battery, but it's a much smaller battery than what EV vehicles have. And I guess that's not to say that in 5 years we wouldn't be there. Just I don't think internationally we're there now. But if people are extremely passionate about going EV at this point, I think Bill and I are also fine with taking that approach.
So my concern on the fully electric was the issues the police department have had with getting, servicing, maintaining the fully.
I
and
think
those
that
are-
was hybrid though.
Those are hybrids too, right?
That was only hybrid. It was not.
They were not fully electric, they were hybrids. So anyway, that's where I was coming from, just the police department's experience so far has not been the greatest, and I don't wanna purchase vehicles that we can't use or can't get or can't service or.
We did just have to
And
return our EV mower to get a gas mower because it just did not work. It
Oh,
was
the one we just purchased?
the one we just purchased this spring.
Just not sure I want to go electric, but just feel like we are not having very good luck.
How much do you get out of it every day?
30 miles it runs on electric, and it charges.
No, your actual use of a vehicle every day, how many miles do you?
Right now, it's been more because I've been chasing FEMA and things like that around. 30 would be high for a typical day. I mean, normally I just go to a job site, and then shoot back
So
to the
that's why
office.
I'm not very concerned about the EV. Should be a good fit. If it's a police department, it's heavily used there. They idle a lot and stuff, so I'm concerned about them. But for you, I think if I have an option, I'll buy EV tomorrow. I'm waiting for my car to get done. So I'm a big fan of EVs, but you use it, so you tell us what you think.
Well, I thought this was a good compromise, but I think people feel passionately otherwise. So
I'm sorry, remind me what the second car is for?
for wastewater,
Oh, okay,
Bob
thank
Wells
you.
hasn't had a
Thank you.
vehicle for years.
Can we have you go to the local dealers and see what they have for options and bring us, so we're actually not just appropriating a dollar figure, that we actually have bids from the local dealers? We have 3 local dealerships, and I would ask them to give you, because it just seems like too much of just an open checkbook, and the fact that there is some passion for at least considering the EV option and see what they can provide for EV, for hybrid, and I think if you're open to hybrid as a bare minimum, but at least those 2, so we have dollar figures, availability, and I think those are pretty crucial. I don't think I'm supportive of an EV from outside the area. If we have to go outside the area to get an EV, for key staff to have to drive to Burlington to get service is a waste of our time. But if they can provide an EV solution, I think we should be looking at that, but I'd like to see specifics. The fact that they didn't give us a bid, I think we need to go to the next step and go back and sit on their doorstep, just like we're buying and saying, okay, give us quotes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go get a quote at the next dealership too. I don't feel we should be approving a purchase that we haven't even looked at, what the purchase is and how much. And I think we owe it to our commitment to try to go more electric, to at least see what those options are and what those prices are.
Okay, this seems fair.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have 2 hands in the audience on Zoom.
Howard wants to talk, and he should go first.
You let her go first?
Howard wants to speak.
Howard wants to speak? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my camera's not working on my computer, so it's not able to see me. But, first let me say, ideally this discussion would have been better had we, the Energy Committee, come into the Infrastructure Committee meeting to discuss it. But I do appreciate the discussion that's taking place here and have a better understanding from Emily how the car is going to be used with a plug-in hybrid. I'm a little bit more comfortable, but I just want to reiterate the goals that we have as the Energy Committee to reduce our carbon footprint 8% for the municipal use by 2030. So obviously EV is fully carbon free. Well, let me back up. I mean, Emily's right that there's a carbon footprint in the manufacturing process of an EV, but once you reach a certain number of miles, it is truly carbon free. Right? All cars have a carbon footprint, right? So if you really have to look at the full life cycle of the car itself to see how you're dealing with carbon. The other thing is, in terms of maintenance, it's much, you have to also consider with an EV, there's much less maintenance involved. I do understand your point, Brian, that you're saying about having to travel up to Burlington to get it serviced. You have County Tire here in Middlebury they do service EVs, so that's something to consider. But I think if you're opening up the bid to at least get an understanding of where EVs fit into the whole picture, then I'm certainly more comfortable with that. But once again, I do respect what you're saying, Emily, and if in fact most of your driving is within 30 mile range, then that gets us most of where we want to get to. Obviously, we would prefer full EV if at all possible. So thank you.
Matt is talking for a second.
Yeah.
There's another mic over here too, if someone wants to come over here.
Text my friend Emily. The minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting were confusing, because they didn't make a distinction between plug-in hybrids and other kinds of hybrids. And I think several of us who read the minutes thought that what the Infrastructure Committee was talking about was buying a regular hybrid.
I was wondering if that was the case.
Okay, which,
Yeah.
I mean, knowing that it's intended for a person who drives less than 35 or 40 miles a day, and that it's a plug-in hybrid which can be plugged in, it certainly changes the picture in terms of the stuff that we wrote about. You all understand that there are 4 kinds of cars on the market right now. Okay, there are gas cars, there are fully electric cars, there are hybrid cars that are not plug-in, and there are hybrid cars that are plug-in. And the hybrid cars that are not plug-in are basically very efficient gas vehicles. We had a Toyota Camry hybrid for 11 years. We just traded it in for an EV. In any given year, the Camry hybrid gets somewhat better mileage than this Camry gasoline car, but not by a lot. It's not that great a move it's not that great from a carbon point of view to move from a gas car to a regular hybrid.
Right.
Moving to a plug-in hybrid where it's appropriate, as it is for you, or to an EV, can make a big difference. I thank Howard for bringing up the 80% goal by the year of reduction by the year 2030. We have a lot of work to do to get there. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Brian, can I comment quickly? I just want to, my understanding from the infrastructure, and I'm sorry if the minutes aren't clear, was Bill requested bids from 10 dealerships for plug-in hybrids and did not receive any responses from any of the 10 dealerships. So I think what we were thinking he could do was go out and see what he could find. And that may involve something that's not a plug-in hybrid, depending on what was available and what he could find. So that may be some of
think
where the confusion came from.
The dealerships won't support fleet bid vehicles. If we go to the lot to make a purchase, they'll support the purchase. Like, they do have the plug-in hybrids, and so we narrowed it down to 5 different models. And then he reached out, I don't remember it being 10, but he reached out to a number of dealerships, and some of them wrote back immediately and said, you know, we can't bid on fleet vehicles. It's just, they can't do it anymore. But if you go window shopping, then obviously they'll sell you a vehicle. And so there is one, I think he found one locally, forget if it's at G-Stone, I forget. But he did find one locally that he was going to go look at to get more information about it.
The fleet system has changed a little bit. Is there still a hand up?
Yes, there's a hand by Judy.
So I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Judy?
Just quickly, I think one of the issues is that EV hybrids are so in demand at this point that supply can't meet the demand. And that's why you're not seeing them on a lot. I truly believe that that's not a reason to discount them. Because that's the direction I believe we should be moving, but that's the reason that Bill can't find them on a lot. Because they can't produce them fast enough. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Judy. Okay, so we have a path forward?
Yeah.
And then bring it back to the, I mean, if you're ready for the next, say the next cycle, it ought to go back through the infrastructure committee.
Okay.
So,
Next, we have the potential to have a sludge dryer pilot at the wastewater treatment plant, which would greatly reduce the amount of solids that we produce at the plant. And it could be, if we decide to go with anaerobic digester, it would help that process, but if we decide not to go anaerobic digester, it would help reduce our overall sludge production. And just given the general status of whether or not land application will be allowed in the future in Vermont, whatever we can do to reduce that quantity. I mean, we're already paying a farmer as it is to take our sludge away, so it would reduce that upfront cost. But it would also, if we did have to go to a landfill or some alternate application, it would reduce the overall solid production that we're creating. So the pilot is a 4-day pilot. The company brings the sludge dryer to the plant and operates it for 4 days. And a bunch of our crew went down to a similar pilot last year, and so other towns can actually pay to bring their sludge to test it out, and the state typically reimburses about 50% of the cost, but it's $9,850 for the pilot itself, and then we would have some additional costs associated with getting 3-phase power and water to the location that they decide to install it for the test period. So we're just seeking approval for that to move forward.
So you put 100% of your sludge for 4 days through it and compare is that
It won't be 100%.
not 100%?
No. I don't know the actual quantity because they're not there. They're only operating it for a certain window of the day, but
Okay.
it would be a good test at least to see. And I don't know that it's sized exactly. You know, like I think
Yeah. So you're weighing it and weighing it. And,
it's 5-gallon buckets.
wow.
But at least the towns that come to visit bring a little bucket with them.
And this will reduce the line, if we go the dryer route, will
It would,
need
it would
less
eliminate the
quicklime in
lime. You can still create a Class A biosolid, but without the lime, which we do want to get away from anyway. It still uses energy because it's heat. But if we find an alternate source of creating energy, there's that potential also.
I'll move that the select board approve the sludge drying pilot program at a cost of $9,850.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
there. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You gonna bring us the results of that?
In a bucket?
And that will inform us on our process as we're looking at the next,
I think it's,
Stage.
any wastewater plants that are getting redesigned right now are pretty much incorporating these in, but it gives you a better idea of how it'll work with your, sludge
With
is
our
very
particular
unique.
sludge.
Exactly.
yeah.
So, it'll give us a better idea.
And yet we have certain manufacturing plants sending stuff in there. I'm sure that our sludge is different.
Exactly.
Sure.
Okay.
Neat.
Moving on, flood updates. I've been working with, I rode around with FEMA for 3 hours today, assessing sites in town. We didn't get to them all. They got pulled off to go look at the bridge in Hancock. But, so we tried to hit the highest dollar ones, at least so they could put eyes on it. I drove with V-Trans last week, I think, 2 weeks ago, I don't even know. Doing the same thing, and we went to every site. Of course, we've had sinkholes develop since then that we didn't give them, but they could at least quantify damages. So I think the next step is just getting the state declaration for the public assistance, which we'll get. It's just a matter of time, I think, is what I keep hearing. Moving forward, we have, I think we're, wastewater total impacts are around 400,000. I think Bob was able to locate some replacement pumps for the main pump station that were considerably less expensive. I had originally been budgeting 100,000 apiece, and he found them at 68,000. They still have to be installed though, so I don't know how much of that cost differential will be eaten up in there. But the main pump station is the major driver for the wastewater, obviously, and then the Rogers Road pump station also lost their pump, so replacing those. Were
they just overtaxed? Was it just,
They got completely
operated 100%?
submerged, and they're not submersible pumps.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, a lot of the new pump stations that we're designing were using submersible pumps,
Gotcha.
which should help.
But Bob said we wouldn't install submersibles on the main pump
Not
station.
at the main pump station, but we could look at putting in floodgates. Above the pumps is just an open grate, so as soon as that building flooded,
Yeah.
it just filled the entire basement where the pumps are, all through that grate. So if I think we can make adaptations at the main pump station to help alleviate this in the future, but, the fix we need in the immediate is replacing those pumps. We did tour the police department, because FEMA hadn't looked at that yet, and so FEMA will cover whatever insurance doesn't cover. They'll also cover our deductible for insurance, and they'll help fill in those gaps. So, any of those structures we tried to look at today. Vermont closure on Route 116. I stopped in there on Friday or Monday and talked to the supervisor. They were gonna start the cofferdam this week, and then they'd be able to draw Dow Pond down a little bit further. They're still pumping it, but they were able to secure the structure from New York, which will get them 75 feet of structure to install. In the meantime, they'll start pouring the remaining 50 feet of it. So it'll be a bit of a timing. Obviously, the structure that they're pouring now will need time to cure and set up. So depending on how long it takes them to install, it's a really deep cut. It's 40 feet down. So a lot of excavation and a lot of water management if we have any more rain events, bypass pumping. So depending on how long it takes them to install it, they would either backfill it to allow one lane of traffic, and in that process, they would install the new water line, or they would just wait for the extra sections, if it's only a matter of days, to do the entire thing and backfill it all at the same time, just to make it faster and safer for the crew.
Emily, did I hear you right? You said 40 feet deep?
They need, yeah. So the intent of that project is to remove the dam from Dow Pond. And so it's a big, I forget, 14 by 8 concrete box. It's something like that. It's large, set quite low, sort of at the dam elevation.
Wow.
Yeah, it's deep. Should go out there. It's pretty impressive. Even, I mean, the hole is only partially exposed, but it's impressive how much is involved in that. So right now, there's an outlet structure that sits on top of the dam, and so they've dug down to expose a portion of that. But they have to go a little bit deeper than that even.
So are they actually looking to keep that water really low, or?
I think I think that was part of the complexity with the permitting issues that they've run into with the hurdles there that has sort of slowed the progress of the project just historically. In some ways, it's unfortunate when you look at water, I mean, like we just saw, to lose that storage volume. It's valuable storage area for
Yeah.
water coming off that hillside, but I believe the intent, the dam is already compromised as it is, and I don't think the state wants to continue managing it as part of the concern.
They wouldn't let me build on a little mud puddle in East Berlin, but they'll take out a big pond like that, huh?
Where does that water go when it comes out of there? Where does it end up? Where, the stream on the other side, where does that?
I don't know, because we were on Painter Road the other day, looking at the damage from where that culvert blew out. I don't know if it hooks up that far. It might, I don't know. I mean, it would have to cross quarry and.
I just wonder if there's impacts to town infrastructure we have to consider if we don't have the water storage at Dow Pond in the future. You know, just.
I think we're going to be looking at a lot of our culverts out of this flooding event. I reached out to V-Trans earlier this week to look at the culvert on Route 7 that is right at the Rogers Road pump station to get a hydraulic study going on that one, because I think that causes a lot of blockage moving up into that neighborhood too.
I can't see a head behind Laura, but I see a hand, okay.
Sorry, just wanted to say the Muddy Branch has it's a large drainage and does drain a portion of that.
Of Dow
It's a
Pond?
very convoluted, the drainage of the Muddy Branch is very convoluted, that goes to the New Haven River.
Okay.
So it probably.
Oh, goes to the New Haven River.
Yeah.
Huh.
Muddy Branch goes to New Haven, the other section just south of there goes to Beaver Brook and then to Middlebury.
Thank you.
We also, Becca Ballant, Representative Becca Ballant, Congresswoman, came with her team last week, and we did a tour of infrastructure issues, and then we also had Governor Scott's cabinet on Friday meeting with residents, which was helpful, I think, for both parties. We looked at, with Ballant's team, we looked at the pump station and that Seymour Street, which got hit really hard. And then we went over to East Middlebury to look at the Middlebury River and the projects that are going on over there. So that was helpful. We also met with NRCS, the Emergency Watershed Planning Project. Is that right? EWP?
Watershed protection.
Watershed Protection project, I think. I feel like project's in there. Kathleen and I met with them yesterday to look at a number of sites, hoping for funding in East Middlebury. And we did not, we haven't secured any funding yet. One of the takeaways was that because we've done work in areas to stabilize properties in the immediate, we no longer qualify for their pot of funding because we have emergency measures in place. And they really want to see homes teetering off a cliff, essentially, to be fundable. Like homes that were still 10 feet away, they're like, might need to wait another storm or two. But then the funding to secure it also takes about 6 months. So had we waited after the July storm to do some of our stabilization efforts, we would have lost those properties in the August storm. So I did reach back out to Governor Scott's team today, and his chief of staff was here on Friday and assured us that we could reach out to them if we ran into any obstacles with our river work. So I said, I think we've run into an obstacle. So they were going to do some brainstorming to see what they can come up with, but it'll definitely be an ongoing conversation. We looked for funding for the two properties, the first ones that we stabilized, 468, 472 East Main Street, and then also 12 Grist Mill, 30 Grist Mill, for the Holbrooks. That was the second letter that we submitted. And then also the Aussie berm has been severely deteriorated from all these events. And so some of them I felt more like it was a more positive reception than others, but they definitely would not give any indicators of a definite answer.
So when they're adding up the particular 1.3 million or whatever, they're currently not putting that into the assessment? Is that what you're saying?
So I didn't even bring FEMA officials over to the river.
You didn't?
No, they didn't have time. So we focused on the major drivers, like the main pump station, just knowing that cost was going to inflate their numbers more quickly. Our current estimate for the work that we have going on, Casella's actively working in the river, just securing the upstream slope of Holbrook's property, the 12 Grist Mill and 30 Grist Mill, Holbrook's and Anderson's, I guess, to at least keep the primary channel from hitting their slope. And so all we're doing is the very upstream portion of it. And so we might be able to get funding from this outfit further down for that stabilization effort. The Aussie Road berm, I felt like they were a little more promising about, just knowing that there are several neighborhoods that would be impacted if we really lost that berm. But again, like there's no house immediately teetering over the cliff, so I think we're just gonna have to chase other funding options.
So yesterday's group was NRCS, and they also have a cost-benefit analysis that they go through with any of their funding.
Where it has to be significantly less expensive to do the protectionary measures than a property that you're selling.
Let it go and buy them out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the ones on the slope, we could take that approach. I don't know that the families would love that, but it doesn't help the river. It doesn't gain floodplain or storage capacity for the river. It's an enormous slope. So I don't think it's the solution for that location at all.
Do they add in like the state work on 116? Does that all add in?
That is a different FEMA group that looks at that. So we were going to go there to look at the water line component of it, but then they got told that they had to be done in Middlebury. So that was our next stop. We were on Painter Road when they got the call and said, you have to leave now.
Will they be back, or you send them documentation?
We'll send them all of our documentation. So we have a meeting on Thursday with the project manager for the July storm, the July event, to get that documentation going. So we'll just have to go through the exact same process for the August storm with a different project manager. and repeat all of the efforts again unless they get the storms combined, but I don't see that happening.
So we're looking at some big expenses, and your team, Emily, is taking the point on finding whatever resources we can to defray our cost.
It wasn't pretty looking through the check register today.
Yeah.
For some of these houses that lost so much property towards the river, I assume that there are leach fields and such.
That was my primary concern in getting them stabilized. Is
Yeah.
Like the first house that we stabilized, if it had gone 10 feet in more, it would have lost their leach field.
Okay.
And then the river would have been inside the Army Corps berm from previous years, so it would have just done bing, 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 leach fields right down the row.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. But right now, there's no property which requires engineered septic or anything to be
Not that I'm aware of at this point, yeah.
good.
I think the Holbrooks at 12 Grist Mill, I think their system was installed in 1979, so it was installed to very different standards than what it would be today.
Sure.
And I think the soils over there allow for that. I know I had Robert Clark from Otter Creek involved in the conversation, and he said that he sees a lot of septic tanks in a dry well and then no actual piping for a leach field.
Right.
But the soil, it works,
Yeah.
you know, it's effective over there, so definitely
That's why
not
it
current
eroded so
standards.
fast though, too, so.
What's that?
That's why it eroded so fast, too. It's all sand and gravel.
It's all sand and gravel, yeah, exactly.
Boy,
Yeah.
Hey, Ruth.
Hi, guys. Have all the landowners also filed applications with FEMA? Individual, not town applications, but individual property owner applications?
So we haven't even filed with FEMA so we did for July,
Uh-huh.
but until it's declared a disaster for the August storm, there's nowhere to file. They have to create the code that you file to.
Okay, because I was
and-
just told today for a property in Ripton, so not a Middlebury property,
Yeah.
that they should file with FEMA, even though it was from the second storm, the August storm. So at least the emergency management at the state level seems to think that individual property owners can file for the August storm. So we should, I'll ask them about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kathleen and I had a similar conversation with, I forget who the rep was that we were talking to, but they were telling us that we needed to file for the public assistance side, and I
Yeah.
said, I don't know how to do that until, because like the July storm is DF 2470 or something.
Yeah,
There's nothing,
there's no number.
there's no number, so
I'll-
like you can't even toggle to an event to put
Okay,
in.
I will try to reach them tomorrow.
Okay, that would be
and find
helpful.
out, because that's what I've been told multiple times, like, you should be filing with FEMA, but if there's no way to do it, then that's
Yeah.
problematic. So I'll see if I can get that information for you tomorrow.
My understanding is that you file with Vermont 211, and then they're supposed to be feeding that to FEMA, and once it hits that magical number, FEMA comes in and creates the emergency.
Yeah, so I mean, the strategy that the governor and the congressional delegation are all taking together is to try to get the events combined.
Yeah,
So I think that's one of the reasons there's sort of a holdup, and I'll see if I can get a status update on that. But
That would
that's
be
what we
great.
heard both from the governor's people and from Congresswoman Ballin last week. And they're, trying to get it all combined, which would be helpful for us because Middlebury had so many random, on days that nobody else had damage.
Right.
Middlebury got damage, that lightning storm, for
Right.
example. But I'll see what I can find out. And don't give up on the NRCS money. I can help you try to, even though that's federal, I certainly try to help you navigate
Okay.
that more, because I think that they should be just telling you no right now, because there's not a house hanging into the river.
they haven't said no yet, but they were very careful to
Yeah.
give any positive Yeah.
Let's talk about it more.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Is that it for me? Oh, no.
I think bottom line, though, that we're all very thankful for everything that you and your team have done. You go around the community and you see just normalcy everywhere. And I think that's a function of how prepared you were and how well you're working with the other contractors. I know your team has put in endless hours, but I also see a lot of contractors, not one. You're not relying on one, you're working with numerous local contractors. So I think kudos are earned, and it's very positive for our community that, Vermont's strong, yes, but Middlebury strong. You did it without the state and federal yet being here. Hopefully they come through and help us, but you've done it, and so we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's any questions on these other public works updates. You did have some more routine stuff that wasn't all, it's
I
not
almost-
all damaged.
I
I know
almost
you're
forget it
doing line
exists.
painting and stuff like that.
Line painting, we're paving, they were supposed to be on site today, but I think they got hung up because of rains on other sites. So hopefully tomorrow, they'll be starting up on Lower Foot Street, and that should go pretty quickly. The reclaim effort turned out really well, so I think that whole road will be good when it's all said and done. South Street has started, Casella's mobilized in. I think they'll start cutting the actual trench later this week. They're just getting environmental controls in place, and milling out the trench, things of that nature, getting set up. Halliday Road, Champlain Construction has been so busy on our storm and also Ripton events, so they've still shut down, which is fine. I'm really worried about the groundwater over there and the culvert just upstream of the pump station, and so when they do that really deep cut for one of the structures in the road, we're gonna have to have all hands on deck to make sure the groundwater is as low as possible, just to keep it as safe as possible. The water tank, all of the SRF funding has pretty much, it's going to be reallocated to these flood events from this summer. So all of the numbers that came out in their June budget are pretty much out the window. And I haven't seen a revised proposed plan from them yet, but I think it'll put us on probably a 2-year cycle to be able to install the water tank. But we'll gain points because we'll have the asset management plan completed by then. So maybe it'll be 2025. It will not be 2024. And Colonial Drive, we have a path forward figured out of using infrared to heat up the asphalt in place around the structures. And then we'll be able to blend in new hot mix as needed to get the road up enough to create a lip to protect the structures from plows and things of that nature. I think that's it.
Emily, I've gotten a couple comments, and I think I saw something on Front Porch Forum as well about crosswalk markings this year, and how it seems that at some fairly treacherous places, the crosswalks still are kind of hard to see.
Yeah, so I know the crew had flaggers for a week in June to specifically do line striping.
Yeah.
And it rained that entire week.
Right.
And then it was like such a long queue to get the flaggers back. They did end up, I think Laura or somebody emailed about the one on Washington Street.
I think they did it.
And they did it that same day. And then I think the other one that's brought a lot of concern is Middle Road North, which makes sense, especially with schools starting soon.
Yeah.
Part of that's in the V-Trans corridor though, so I don't know how we deal with that internally, but.
They were out this morning on College Street and Academy Street. Line.
Our crew?
Yeah.
Or V-Trans?
Yep, our crew.
Okay. I did see V-Trans with L&D out, I think it was yesterday, So they're definitely hitting spots too. I think the rain has been the major struggle, but
Yeah.
my concern would be a lot of the school traffic. We need to make sure that those places are
For sure.
dialed in
Yeah.
in a week.
Yep.
I
And
mentioned
then
it
we start
wasn't in
scraping
here,
them
but
off the roads again with our plows.
Yeah.
I mentioned it because I did see them out, and I know that the rain is the big thing that
There's been a hurdle this
kept
year.
them from being able to
Yeah.
tackle it when they were ready.
Yep. I know Bill's definitely been pushing them to get it done, and every time he brings it up, the rain is the major driver in it, so it's definitely on their radar.
I figured as much.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks,
Emily.
Emily. Joe and Dana.
Ready to talk about the library? Yeah? All right, I hope so. Good evening, everybody. I'm Joe McVeigh. I'm the chair of the Ilsley 100 project team, here with Dana Hart, our library director, and also in the house here with us tonight, we have from the Library Board of Trustees, Meg Baker and Amy Mincher. Amy Mincher is also a member of the Ilsley 100 project team, as are Jim Gish, Ken Perrine, Farhad, Ruth Hardy. So all those folks are here tonight. Dan, as you know, is off in the Canadian wilderness and unavailable. We should also give special credit to Victoria DeWind, who is our #1 fan and has been to more of our project team meetings than some of our team members. Hey, so it's our hope tonight to do three things with you. First, to briefly recap the process that we've been through, to make our recommendation for who to go forward with, and then hopefully you'll affirm that decision, and then have a little conversation with you about where we want to be going for our next steps. So, and Dana's going to jump in here and correct me when I
As needed.
when I misspeak. So you may recall that back around February we issued a request for qualifications. We had 6 teams of people who came through to us for that. We narrowed the field to 4. But at that time, as part of the request for qualifications, we looked very carefully at the qualifications of those people, including checking their references. And all these people have built libraries in Vermont. I'm sorry, all the people that we chose had built libraries here in Vermont. One of those firms dropped out, leaving us with 3 in our design competition. So we gave all of those 3 firms the same information, a very detailed square footage program, a sense of adjacency diagrams, what should be next to what, our design pillars for a safe, welcoming, accessible community hub that would be flexible and sustainable now and into the future. Dana wrote a wonderful, challenging letter to them saying, look, here are some things we'd really like you to deal with here in the building, and kind of some of those are aligned with our design pillars. And she also said, it'd be really great if you would surprise and delight us, which I thought was a wonderful touch there. So all those design firms had access to our all of our meeting minutes. They even had access going back to the 2014, 2017 materials there. So one of our goals was to make this a very fair competition. None of us had ever run anything like that before. And in order to make sure of that, Judith Harris, who was serving as our technical advisor, did almost all of the communication with people. And when she emailed people, she emailed all of the 3 teams together. When one person asked a question, we would not answer them directly. We would post the answer on the website so everybody had access to the same information at one time. And some of us had friends who were a part of those architecture firms. It's a small town, and we were very careful not to talk about things when we were with them. So we wanted to give these teams multiple opportunities to share their ideas and designs with us. So first off, they submitted their plans and their narratives anonymously. We looked at those, some of us looked at those without knowing which team was which. We then had a 2-hour presentation and interview with each of those 3 teams, in which they first kind of presented their vision for us, and then we asked them questions, and we had conversations about how we might work together in the future. Then they had a chance to post their design boards in the library lobby, and members of the public could take a look at that. Those were up there for a couple of weeks. And finally, there was the public presentation, which I think most of you attended on August 9th in the Town Hall Theater. So they had multiple opportunities to present their ideas, and we, as the ILSI 100 ILSI 100 project team, had multiple sources of input to consider as we were trying to make our decision. First of all, we engaged a small volunteer group of professional architects that we called our professional advisory group. They looked very, very carefully at the designs and gave us their thoughts. We, at a all-day retreat, the library trustees also looked at the plans and gave their thoughts. Dana sat down with library staff to get their opinions. And then, of course, we heard from the public as well. So now those first three, the public advisory group and the trustees and the staff, that was all before we knew who was who. So we had some feedback anonymously. I wanted to make a note about the public feedback. So the public had the opportunity to weigh in on the display boards that were up in the library, and then again at the Town Hall Theater. We put some comment cards together, and we had 121 responses. We can't say that we had 121 people because there might have been some eager folks who have gave their opinion more than once. But we had people complete those comment cards on paper. We had people submit to an online form, and people who had a lot to say emailed Dana. And all of those responses were entered electronically by Dana's staff, and we've included those in your board packet, or if you're watching online, you can see this on the online board packet. To spare you having to read through all of those, there's also a summary that Dana put together, and we'd be glad to talk about that with you if you like. But one thing we wanted to note is that we did not ask the public to vote. We did not say, which design is your favorite? Because we know that a lot of people react kind of quickly to the appearance of something and don't have the time to kind of dig a little bit more deeply into how things are located and so on. So we asked people for their opinions. We got a lot of opinions. One of the fun parts of this for me is the fact that often people have exactly the opposite opinion about the same design feature. For example, hey, there's an atrium. What a great idea. That's going to bring in natural light, and it's a skylight. It's going to open everything up, right? And then we have people, that's an atrium. That's a waste of space there. That's going to be really noisy, you know? And there are many, many issues to which people have the exact opposite response. So, as you know, we advise people over and over again, these are conceptual designs. This is not exactly what you're going to be getting. It's probably going to look a little bit, or maybe even a lot different there. So the project team, we were thrilled. We were really thrilled with what we got out of this design competition. It was exactly what we were hoping for. We gave everybody the exact same instructions, and we got three totally different conceptions of how we might move ahead. And we were impressed with all of the competitors, with all of the designs. All of them went just above and beyond the assignment, as Brian pointed out at the public meeting. I mean, we were paying them $5,000. We got 5 or 10 times worth that from them. And you know, we would have been in good hands with any one of these companies. That made the job of selecting one of them very, very difficult because, you know, although a lot of benefits of the design competition, one of the challenges is that we can only work really with one of them. That's kind of one of the drawbacks. And if you have a competition and there are 3 firms in it, that means 2 of them are going to be disappointed. So we're sorry that we couldn't work with everybody. And for those people who really liked one of the firms that we didn't go with, we're sorry about that too, but we're gonna move ahead. So the project team, by a vote of 6-1, voted to move ahead with the team of Weeman Lamphere and REARC. I think if if our alternate had been able to vote, I think it's quite possible that instead of being 6-1, it would have been 6-1-1. So just to show there were some divergences of opinion there. But some of the things that the project team really liked about the Weeman-Lamphere REARC concept, our professional advisory group pointed out that this concept was really driven by the program. In other words, the program, where we needed things, what would go well together. They had really thought that through very, very carefully, and thought that the design was very bold. It was a bit urbanistic, the idea of having the door out to the sidewalk sort of made it a little bit more, hey, this is a downtown area, the library should reflect that. Dana and her staff felt that the floor plan showed a very close reading of how libraries function, that they really read that program very, very clearly, and that the floor plan and the things that were next to each other solve a lot of problems that we have right now in the library. And it also had a lot of flexibility for the future, which is one of the things that we need. It inspired confidence in the staff. I think the project team in particular liked the idea of a building on 2 floors. If we're asking for more square footage, you got 2 options. You can go up or you can go out. This design opted to go out. I believe I heard Dana say that she never let herself dream of the possibility of a library on 2 floors. And for their design, there's very, very little in the basement at all. And the 3rd floor is essentially sealed off. It's all happening on 2 floors. And one of the fun things about this process was that as we interviewed the firms, you could bet that there were certain people who were going to ask certain questions. Okay, I think Ruth was going to ask about resilience, and Glenn Andres was going to ask about what are you going to do with the front door. And Dana's question was, how many stops are there going to be on the elevator?
Yeah, I wish that hadn't become the question I'm known for, because it's not. But I did ask. I asked other questions too.
She did. And I think Weeman-Lamphere REARC won that question with only 4 stops on the elevator.
It wasn't a contest.
It wasn't a contest.
But their answer was 4.
Their answer was 4. So that is the design that has an entrance that extends out to Main Street, has an elevated outdoor programming space, and also is kind of looking down the hill towards the possible EDI site. So this is not to say that's what it's going to look like by the time we're done. It may well not, but that's kind of where we're starting. So we felt that those concepts really showed that a team was thinking about how to create a building that was radically welcome, accessible, safe, and also willing to think very creatively and to take some risks. So part of what we're looking for was a design. We were also looking for a team that we'd like to work with, and we felt that their team was very responsive, had very clear communication, and would be ready to move quickly when the time comes. So that is our recommendation, and we'd be happy at this point either for you to make a decision about that, or we could talk about, and then we could go on to talk about future steps, or you can ask us questions about the decision or whatever you think.
I'd like to take this part up first. Don't know where the board sits on this, so if any questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments. The first comment is just, I can feel tension, I think, within the community based on the 15% increase
Wait a
on
second.
taxes.
Okay, so can we, I regret that I even brought that up, because I asked it just to get a sense. 15%, let's not talk about the money right now, let's talk about the design. Let's just get away from that.
I get that, but I think that it led to people feeling uneasy about the project as a whole. And moving forward, I want us to just work really honestly to move with the best intentions ahead of a project as a group working towards a common goal. I really appreciate the work that the project team did, and I feel really confident in the work that they've done, and I feel really confident moving forward in their request tonight. because of how open and transparent they have been. And I encourage all of us to be open and transparent with where we're at in this process and where we stand as individuals and where we stand as select board members. But I know I'm ready to move forward.
On the decision for the design team.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what we are
Is
asking.
all we're
Right now,
talking
we are
about.
asking, are we okay with what they are recommending to us?
Yeah.
That's the
and-
question we have on the
yeah.
floor. So I'm very comfortable with going with the recommendation.
Oh, I'm psyched with this. It was definitely my pick as well, as a non-voting, very interested member.
It's not my pick, but that's okay. So we haven't talked about cost at all, and I think they were supposed to stay within a certain budget, but typically in what I know about construction, a larger footprint with more roof and more foundation is more expensive than 3 floors under a smaller footprint. And I know that's obviously not desirable, but it's usually more expensive to build something that looks like that than something that's smaller. Just speaking personally, in what information I have, I was, based on the public presentations, the company you selected was my least favorite presentation. It was my least favorite design. I know it's not about the design. So I also think it's the more expensive choice of the design, so.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm just one of a whole group, and it's okay.
If I may comment, I think one of the things, in terms of that design, when we saw it, I believe that my comment was, they colored outside the lines a little bit from what they were tasked with. And one of Judith Harris's very first comments was, okay, this is more square footage than we asked for. This is outside the cost, that's gonna have to come in.
Yep. I just thought it didn't, I know it's not about the design, right? It's more about the firm and how the firm works with that, the design can be figured out later, right? So anyway.
I think more importantly, the professional advisory group did a lot of due diligence on this, and they advised us that this design makes more sense to fit in all the programming we're talking about, I think, and that was the one.
I was just going to offer a point of clarification on the coloring outside the lines and the concern about the budget, which is just to clarify that there was not a ceiling figure given. We shared the $14.8 million target, we shared the square foot target, and it was kind of up to each team to decide or how close are we going to get to those figures, and each team had different square footage and different budget. So it was over the 14.8, but we hadn't set that as a disqualifying.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
I just, in general, it didn't fit the air. We can move on. I'm one person in this whole process, so, can't please everyone. That's okay.
How well you know that, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just, so that everybody has made a comment, say where I stand on it. I was impressed with all 3 presentations. We tasked you to vet them, and I have been very impressed with your process of vetting a design firm. I think you've been very engaged, you've had a lot of quality people, and I'm not going to double guess what your recommendation is. And so I'm supportive of it because that's what you guys are recommended, and I would have gone with any of the 3. I would, because they all seem to be qualified, and they all seem to have engaged in the task to help the town develop a new library in earnest, not just pencil whipping it. So I was impressed with any of them and appreciate the rationale that you've given us for your recommendation, and I'm supportive of it as well because of that. I think we have more ahead of us, and I don't think it's as easy as saying we go forward today. And we'll talk about that hereafter, but as far as a design firm, I too would support that, and if we have 4 that are willing to vote for it, maybe, I think for the design firms that have engaged, and given it their all, I think we probably owe them an answer if that's the direction the board's going to go. So if somebody would care to make a motion?
Yep. So I'll move to accept the recommendation of the Ilsley 100 project team for the professional team of Women Lampier Architects and REAR Company to become the preferred schematic design service provider for the Ilsley Public Library renovation expansion project.
Second.
I think we've all said our comments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay. I'm gonna go on the books, one opposed. How often do we have one opposed? Not that it makes a difference, but it just,
Yeah, but you know what? It makes the other design teams feel better about it.
yep.
There's a utilitarian reason for it.
I do appreciate all of the work that the design teams did and that the project team has done, and I can't thank you enough for the time and energy that you've put into this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather, and we appreciated you coming to our meeting last Thursday and sharing some context for some of the other things going on here.
I also appreciated how you took all of those comments and put them into categories that were easily digestible. That was awesome.
Oh,
Dana's
thank
stuff.
you. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So did that motion pass?
Oh, yeah.
That motion is passed.
All right. Do we have a few minutes to talk a little bit about next steps? I understand, but we'll be hopefully doing
Yeah,
that in greater depth, just to put a couple things out
So I
there.
know you have some thoughts on it, so if you could give us those.
Sure.
And then I'd like to talk to the board about
Sure.
how I feel we should proceed.
Sure. I just, as we contemplate moving ahead, this kind of feels like, playing a game of Tetris or something where there's like a lot of moving pieces, and it's hard to know which comes first or if they can go ahead together. So we're talking about issues about money, right? How much can we afford? We're talking about a design. What's the design going to look like? Do we need to know the cost before we go ahead with the design? Can we start on the design and then work on the cost there? Where's the money coming from? How much of a bond can we afford? Where can we get money from other sources and so on? So Dana has been working hard with our fundraising consultant. We're hoping to go forward with a fundraising feasibility study in the fall. To do that, we'd like to be able to work with our selected services provider? Our preferred service provider. We didn't want to say winner and loser, so. To do that and so on. So we're concerned, what if we can't go forward? How are we going to keep the building operating? It's falling down around our ears. What does the timetable look like? If we could get to a March bond vote, we might be able to break ground next summer, next fall. We wouldn't have to get through the 2 winters in the library. So these are all issues that are of concern to us. And, when can we start on the schematic design? Which comes first? So one of the things that we realized with the project team was meeting on Thursday, and we were mulling over some of these issues, is we realized that we're sometimes working in a little bit of a vacuum because we don't know what you're thinking on the financial side. Meanwhile, there are issues related to the design and the design process that Chris Huston and the REARC folks might be able to answer for us. For example, something that's come up is the possibility of phasing. Well, I know Dana has views on phasing, Chris might have views on phasing, you might have views on phasing. So one thing I would invite you to consider would be if you're planning a special meeting specifically for the library, might we possibly have a joint working meeting, with the select board, with the Ilsley 100 project team, with representatives of Women Lampier and REARC, so we'd have everybody in the room, and one of those questions comes up, we're not just kind of wondering about it. So I'd invite you to consider that as a possibility.
So I talked to Joe a little bit about this. That wasn't a surprise to me. I think that Kathleen and I will get together. I asked everybody if September 5th was available because, I do think we should try to have a select board discussion at the earliest opportunity, to at least figure out a strategy and what our next steps are. I know that, you know, it was to not speak of, to speak of money, you take it as being attention, I take it as being a fiscal responsibility of us as a board. And I only throw that out because I think that has to be part of our discussion. And, you know, I'm not trying to throw cold water on a hot fire, but when you ask, we had 225 or whatever, 250 of the most passionate promoters of the library in a room, and when you throw a number out, whether it's exactly right or not, and how it's interpreted, there is cause for pause. And that tells me that we need to do our job of ensuring that we are tapping every fund available, engineering it to the most efficiently that we can, and that it is a deliberative process that we go through. They have done what we tasked them to do, the IPL 100, to lead us to this step. Now we have, certainly there's energy within the community, there's a desire, there is a need, proven need. Now the question is for us to figure out where does the board sit and how do we finance it, and do we, you know, classic examples, do we bond it all and then try to pay it, or do we try to raise money, figure out how much it is, and then bond it? And some of that has to do with where do you, at what point do you actually get majority support within the community to bond it? I mean, if we take a bond prematurely to the community without a full plan and how that looks to them, we could fall on our face and then, you know, it's not the way we take a project to the town. We have not done that on any of our projects, and we've been very successful. And so my preference is always that we be slow the pace, be deliberative about it, and ensure that we're doing the right thing by everybody within the community. So I think that then we establish a meeting where we're actually talking about all of that, that we look at what's the cost. You know, get from the project, the design team, how can you, is there possibilities to phase it, or is there, can you design that so that it's maybe a tighter envelope and still get your programming capacity? And, I think we still have a lot of work to do at the board level now. Now it's to us. And then the question is, on the fundraising, what's our capacity to fundraise, which I think is probably, we haven't tasked IPL 100 with a follow-on task. And the question is, does the board want IPL 100 to continue working, and in what capacity, and what's the charge? So we have a little work to do, and I think it's requisite upon us to come to have everybody, all 7 members present, and have a discussion. And bring your submit. I would ask you to submit any questions or thoughts you have ahead of time, so that we have time to research the data. We're actually looking at, you know, one of the things is what's a bond look like in the current environment? How does that impact? You know, I pulled a number out that I calculated walking up to the stage, and it was just for sheer straw poll, and it wasn't meant to go out in the Addison Independent and be printed on people's letters. It was meant to ask my 250 best friends in the room what they thought and what level of pressure they're going to put on us to trim that down. So anyways, if everybody is available for September 5th, That would be my preference, is that we block, I think we're gonna need an hour and a half. And look at your calendars. If 6 o'clock works better for you, so you can get out and go home early, I'm happy to start at 6. So, since it's not a, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions that I would like to have answers for before the discussion. Can I bring them up now, or would you rather I email them?
Either way, if you,
Okay. Do we know how much going forward, the design cost? Like, do we have a number?
The schematic design?
Yeah, for just the design part? No?
No, so I think one of our proposed next steps would be to start having that conversation and getting that number.
Yeah,
That's
our-
kind of what we're asking for, is one of the
In
next steps.
in your board packet was a draft RFP.
Yep.
So our hope actually had been that you would work, send out that RFP tonight, and we could start having those conversations and start talking about a contract to go ahead.
So, the concern I have is we obviously didn't put money in this budget for that, right?
Yes, we did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
To cover the design?
Yes.
Okay, my,
Best guess at covering the design.
okay. So that was part of my conversation.
and the reason why I've asked us not to do that yet is I think if we're going to put pressure on the design to pare it down to a certain dollar figure or something like that, that should be part of the,
We can talk about it on the 5th, but the only thing I think about, like, from infrastructure project standpoint, is when we have shovel-ready projects, we're more successful in getting funding. And the sooner we can get there's nothing gonna go bad in moving forward with the design and having design, if we have the money available to pay for it. That's just my perspective on that. I don't see any harm if we have the money to move forward with the design, because that's gonna take some time too. So, and then that's gonna give us better numbers, and that puts us in a better position to then, I think, go after funding. So,
and these are all the things that I think.
you wanna wait, sorry.
We're not gonna
You
go
wanna
tonight.
wait until the 5th to talk about that? Okay. I'm okay with that.
Okay, so if everybody, including you, if you have thoughts or anything, if you could email them to myself and Kathleen, that would be good. Okay?
All right.
Actually, just one thing I just wanted to clarify again, since you had mentioned funding and not knowing the community's capacity and also the project team's work being done, I just wanted to make sure you know that the feasibility study is moving forward. I'll be working on that with the funder.
Right,
I just want
we
everyone
approved
to-
that previously.
Yeah, that was already approved. Okay, good.
But we don't know where you're at. I mean, we don't have any money yet. It's feasibility.
Correct, that's a short update, but
And-
it'll be the feasibility,
yeah.
which will give us an idea of the community's capacity and appetite. Capacitite might
yeah.
be the new buzzword for fundraisers around the state after this.
Take it.
Yeah.
And so we should have that information probably in about 2 months.
And just as I noted in our report, the end point for the ILSI 100 project team is a little bit ambiguous, because on the one hand, the project team was tasked to bring the project to fruition, which it's certainly not there yet. On the other hand, it was to submit a design, but it wasn't clear as to whether that was a conceptual design or that was a schematic design. So I think that many of us are interested in going forward and continuing to serve, and maybe we can clarify that.
So maybe we put that on the agenda
It's all
for the
part
5th.
of, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Talking about taxes, Kathleen?
Okay. So, in your packet, I have prepared the usual presentation on the proposed tax rate for 2024, FY 2024. On March 6, 2023, voters approved the general fund operating budget of $12,921,448 for FY 24, with $8,553,380 to be raised by taxes and $809,308 to be allocated from the local option tax receipts in excess of amounts required for debt service, for debt and maintenance requirements of the Cross Street Bridge to offset spending for capital improvements. As you know, voters also approved an article authorizing the Select Board to apply $228,496 from the Cross Street Bridge Fund local option tax to offset increased capital improvement expenses of $92,860 and the PD adaptive reuse building debt service expense of $135,636, reducing the amount to be raised by taxes by $8,324,884. In addition to the amounts raised for the general fund spending, the municipal tax rate includes the funding for the veterans exemptions and for the fire equipment fund of 2 cents. Using the 2023 grand list of $9.8 million, divided into the amount needed for taxes as outlined above. The municipal tax rate under consideration by the board, including the veterans exemptions and the fire equipment fund, is 86.48 cents.
Whoops, sorry.
And that is as estimated at budget time, just a little bit lower than that because there was about 0.5% growth in the grant list.
I had 87 cents, and I see they, hey, every little bit counts.
Yep.
In case you haven't figured that out.
Can
Any
I,
questions on that? Go ahead.
I just have one quick question. So in the, on the municipal tax, you provided the rate increase, but not for the DIDC. What is, so it, with the increase, is there increase to the grand list so the tax rate's gone down because the budget stayed the same, or
The grand list went down just a sliver.
on the DIDC?
DIDC.
Okay. So this calculated rate is actually up a little bit because the
Yeah.
DIDC.
0.001.
Oh, okay, okay. But otherwise, I was just trying to understand the change, like you had given up above.
Yeah.
That's fine, thank you.
Questions on the municipal tax rate?
Does this have any impact if we were to do a TIF or anything like that? Like, I just went to a conference where they talked about districts for TIFs. Is this a part of this downtown improvement district? Would that be a TIF district, or is that a completely different thing that we would set up and map that out?
Yeah,
We'd have to establish the TIF district
Gotcha.
and the project that it's funding.
And we would have a different conversation about that tax rate? It would, or would it?
you know,
No, that's how those taxes are applied
Oh,
and handled.
gotcha. Same tax rate.
Same tax
where
rate.
they
Yeah.
are applied to.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
and it's more about the educational
Yeah.
taxes
Gotcha.
and not the municipal taxes.
Well, we have to pledge the
It's
municipal.
very, very confusing.
Yeah.
The conference was really good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It does drive how those municipal taxes are used for those.
Right. I'll move that the select board set the municipal tax rate for fiscal year '24 at 86.48 cents per $100 of property value.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I move that the select board set the downtown improvement district tax rate for fiscal year '24 at 5.13 cents per $100 of property value.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And note that the state's education tax rate has been issued to us now. My bookkeeper was asking me, did I forget to give her the tax bills because they're gonna be due?
So that brings us to a good point. So you have 2 tax installments this year, one on November 15th and one on March 15th.
Yes, which is where I was headed.
Yeah, well, I was checking the check warrants to tie everything together. There were a couple calls fielded by people wondering where their tax bills were.
I've had a couple people reach out.
Yeah.
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 Okay, check warrants.
Speaking of, and
Speaking of.
I really appreciate the efforts of the folks in the finance department. There was a red herring in the warrants. There was a $20 invoice that did not show up on the register because it had been voided, and that had not, they were just trying to catch me to make sure I was paying attention. Anyway.
Good one.
Yeah, so I would move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $756,678.98, consisting of $606,653.30 for accounts payable and $150,025.68 for payroll for the period of August 9th through August 22nd of the year of our Lord 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board member concerns. Heather?
I don't have any.
Wow.
I know, right?
All good,
I already
thanks.
expressed them all.
As well?
On Monday, I believe it was, I attended, not yesterday, last Monday, attended the Vermont Council on Rural Development's Community Leadership Conference at Vermont State University Randolph campus, and it was great. I attended 3 sessions. The first one was on looking at a budget for a project, and the example actually was the park that we have, the mobile home park. And I said, I'm a member of the Middlebury Selectboard. And they were like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. This is the project we're talking about today. So it was just a really great session on breaking down a budget and just like what you should include in your budget to make it more shovel ready. And then I did a diversity, equity, and inclusion session, just to how to make people feel more included in your community. And then the last one was private-public partnerships, and they used St. Albans as a idea, I guess. So pretty much what St. Albans is doing is they set up a TIF district, and then they also are asking every March at town meeting, like, how willing the voters are to, you know, take on old unused buildings, get them ready, and then support smaller public or smaller private businesses to get into those places. So it was just a really interesting project. They had a person from Trisha Coach. She's now leading a new committee at UVM on rural development funded by the federal government. They had the president of Killington there in that session. So it was just really cool to see how they talked about different levels of private partnerships, you know, with Killington being a huge business and a major driver for the town of Killington. And then having like a bar owner in Montpelier talking about being a small business owner and their role there.
Was it Wes?
What does he own?
3 Penny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really interesting to go to this conference, and I really enjoyed it.
Neat.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I attended the state's visit last week. Just the stories of hardship are ridiculous. One person speaking for the ag community mentioned that they'd gotten 22 inches of rain since the end of June, which is, you know, better than half of our normal annual precipitation across 2 months. He's not on the river, but you can't go out in the fields. There's just, it's just slop. Today actually is the first day there's not standing puddles on the sidewalk across the street from me, which is lovely. And it's super nice to see that crazy shining orb in the sky, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good days.
we do the CSA at the Elmer Farm on 116, and I think they have measured over 27 inches of rain since June till now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one
They've-
night, we had
they've-
more than 6 inches in 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah, they've,
6 inches.
they've
Have they just
lost,
shut down their CSA, or are they getting
no,
it in
they have
for
enough.
other places?
They have enough to keep the CSA going, but they've lost considerable sales, wholesale sales.
Sure.
So they're keeping, their CSA going, but
Yeah,
their wholesale down, I think they said they were down like 75%.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ryan, I'll be sending out a reminder to everybody, but there is a bike ped plan public input meeting coming up next Tuesday night at 7 PM here at the town offices.
Can we decide before we adjourn, are we meeting at 6 on the 5th, or 7, or
6 work for
6:30?
everybody?
6 is fine.
6?
So let's
Can,
post it for
um,
6.
Can Lindsay and Dan join us?
Dan was either gonna be there in person or on Zoom.
I don't think he'll be on person.
What's
Yeah.
that? I think
I
it's
think
on
he's remote.
Zoom. He's gonna
He's on
Zoom
Zoom,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, but, because he had September 5th.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I was gonna talk to tonight, so we'll just hear back from her. But it's a Tuesday, which is our
So I'm gonna
Kinda
put it
pick-
in for 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock
Okay.
Tuesday.
And do you want me going to the MREMS meeting just purely leading with curiosity and getting as much information as possible?
Be great.
Okay.
You don't even have to be a mole, you can be out there. Visible.
Yeah.
Skies.
Yeah.
How many independent ambulance services are there at this point? Are we in an anachronism that it's not tied to the hospital?
In Vermont, there's several.
Okay.
It's, funding them is a real challenge.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
a lot of those rides are not paid for, they're,
Yeah, there was a great 7 Days article earlier this year about the challenges, the 30% annual increases in trips recently. The thing that I had never contemplated, which is that if you arrive at the ER on an ambulance, you kind of jump the line. And there's some bad incentives in the system around the use of ambulance services.
wow, I did not know that.
Me either. I
Okay.
wasn't, yeah.
All right, well, I had a great weekend and all refreshed because we went and got some sun, and then I come back home and
You
get
went to
some
Maine,
sun.
right?
And you brought the
What's that?
sun.
You were in Maine?
We went to Maine and I had not been to Maine in a couple of years, and I ate lobster, wasn't quite 2 meals a day for the 3 days we were there, but it was almost, it was twice a day, I think, so. I enjoyed it, we had a good time, so, nice to be back, though. Great seeing all the good things that are going on, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Jerry?
Yeah.